So having understood the structure of kidney, the function of nephron, as well as the formation of urine, now let's move on to see how the regulation of kidney function happens. So we know that every organ and every system in our body is under both the nervous control as well as hormonal control, right? So let's discuss the hormonal feedback mechanism involved in the control of your kidney. The functioning of the kidney is efficiently monitored and regulated by hormonal feedback mechanism involving the following organs, that is hypothalamus, juxtaglomerular apparatus, and to a certain extent the heart. Okay, so these organs, that is hypothalamus, juxtaglomerular apparatus, and to some extent the heart will be involved. So in our body we have something called as osmoreceptors, just like we have different receptors on our body, like the touch receptors, the pressure receptors. Similarly, there are receptors present in our body which will measure the blood volume or the body fluid volume. So osmoreceptors in the body are activated by changes in blood volume, body fluid volume, and ionic concentration. An excessive loss of fluid from the body can activate these receptors. So whenever there is a decrease in the level of fluid in our body, or if there is a excessive loss of fluid in our body, then these osmoreceptors will get activated, which stimulates the hypothalamus to release ADH or vasopressin from the neurohypophysis. So you know that, right? The hypothalamus has got one of its part, that is a neurohypophysis, and the neurohypophysis will produce ADH or vasopressin. So the activation of osmoreceptors will stimulate the hypothalamus to produce this hormone, that is ADH or vasopressin. Now let's see what the ADH or vasopressin will actually do. An increase in body fluid volume can switch off the osmoreceptors and suppress the ADH release to complete the feedback, right? So once your ADH has succeeded in increasing the body fluid volume, it's very important that we bring back things to normalcy, right? So at that moment, what is going to happen? The osmoreceptors will get switched off, and then due to which there is a suppression of the ADH release, which will complete the feedback mechanism. ADH can also affect the kidney function by its constrictory effect on blood vessel. This causes an increase in blood pressure. So ADH will help in increasing the blood pressure. And how does it do that? How does it achieve it? It does this by constricting the blood vessel. As you know, when the blood vessel constricts, there is an increase in blood pressure, and that increase in blood pressure in turn results an increase in the glomerular blood flow, and thereby there is an increase in the glomerular filtration rate. And we have already understood how important the glomerular filtration rate is for the normal functioning of the kidney. Now let's have a look at the role of JGA, or the juxtaglomerular apparatus. So it plays a complex regulatory role. A fall in glomerular blood flow can activate the JG cells to release renin. Now, which is a hormone that is responsible for controlling the kidney function? It is the very important hormone, that is renin. So whenever there is a decrease in the GFR or glomerular blood flow, then the JG cells will get activated, because the JG cells contains the renin secreting cells. So the activation of the JG cells will result in the production of the hormone, that is renin. Now what is renin going to do? Renin will convert angiotensinogen. Now you know that angiotensinogen is a substance which is produced in the liver, and this angiotensinogen will be present in the plasma of the blood, right? So renin converts angiotensinogen in blood to angiotensin 1, and then it gets converted into its active form, that is angiotensin 2. Okay, so what is the role of renin? The main role of renin is to convert angiotensin, okay, which is produced by the liver and found in the plasma, to convert it into angiotensin 1 and then into angiotensin 2. Now this angiotensin 2 is a powerful vasoconstrictor. Okay, just like what we saw previously with the ADH hormone, a similar function can be carried out with the angiotensin 2 as well. It will also help in vasoconstriction. And whenever vasoconstriction happens, what happens? There is an increase in blood pressure, and that increase in blood pressure thereby increases the GFR. Angiotensin 2 also activates the adrenal cortex. So angiotensin 2 also has its influence on the adrenal cortex to release aldosterone. So aldosterone is the hormone which is produced by the adrenal cortex. So aldosterone causes reabsorption of sodium and water from the distal parts of the tubule, because your body wants to conserve water, right? So what is going to happen? The aldosterone will cause reabsorption of sodium and water back into your system from the distal parts of the tubule. So this also leads to an increase in blood pressure and GFR. So this complex mechanism is generally known as renin-angiotensin mechanism. Okay. Now let's have a look at the role of heart in controlling the kidney function. So the heart produces a hormone called as atrial natriuretic factor, and you know, as you can see the word atrial here, the word atrial obviously refers to the atrium, right? An increase in blood flow to the atria of the heart can cause the release of atrial natriuretic factor. So in the earliest slides, we observed that how the hormone, that is vasopressin as well as the renin hormone, was responsible for increasing the blood pressure and thereby increasing the GFR. Now we need to have some control to bring back the blood pressure back to normalcy, right? So that is what your atrial natriuretic factor will do. What will the ANF do? ANF, that is atrial natriuretic factor, cause vasodilation. So if renin hormone as well as the vasopressin hormone were responsible for vasoconstriction, that is, they narrowed the blood vessel, narrowed the aperture of the blood vessel, here they are causing the dilation or the expansion of the blood inner aperture of the blood vessel, due to which what is going to happen? Obviously there will be a decrease in the blood pressure. ANF mechanism therefore acts as a check on the renin-angiotensin mechanism. As we have discussed earlier, the renin-angiotensin mechanism is responsible for increase in the blood pressure and thereby increase in the GFR. So there should be a mechanism which will act as a check on the renin-angiotensin mechanism, and that is why your heart produces this atrial natriuretic factor, that is ANF, thereby helping in reducing the blood pressure. So now let's move on to the next part of this chapter, and that is a phenomena called as micturition. Micturition in simple terms means the release of urine from the urinary bladder. So the process of release of urine is called micturition. Let's understand how exactly this micturition phenomena occurs. So urine formed by the nephron is ultimately carried to the urinary bladder, where it is stored till a voluntary signal is given by the central nervous system, right? So we know that our actions is under the control of the nervous system, right? So we know that the process of release of urine is actually a voluntary phenomena. So this signal is initiated by the stretching of the urinary bladder as it gets filled with the urine. So you can see that in the urinary bladder there are some stretch receptors. So once your urinary bladder gets filled with urine, there is some pressure generated on the stretch receptors, or we can say that the stretch receptors gets activated, and this stretch receptors then will send a signal to the central nervous system. Okay, the stretch receptors then will send a signal to the central nervous system, and then the central nervous system passes on motor message. You know that whenever any message is carried from the central nervous system to the muscle, we call it as motor message. So the CNSS passes on motor message to initiate the contraction of smooth muscle of the bladder. The smooth muscle of the urinary bladder is also known as detrusor muscle. It is also known as detrusor muscle, and simultaneous relaxation of the urethral sphincter. Now, if urine has to be released from the urinary bladder, it is must that there is relaxation of the urethral sphincter. So this message that is coming from the central nervous system, this motor message, which is giving a message to the smooth muscle for the contraction of the smooth muscle as well as the relaxation of the urethral sphincter, causes the release of urine. And this is how the process of micturition takes place. So in the process of maturation, we could observe how the stretch receptors present in the urinary bladder had sent a signal to the central nervous system, and the central nervous system sent a message through the motor message, influencing the smooth muscle contraction and also the relaxation of the urethral sphincter, which aid in the release of urine.